You know, sometimes I look around and see how fast everything's moving, how loud the world can be, everyone trying to tell you who to be, what to look like, what to chase. And I think maybe we've forgotten how to listen, especially when it comes to how we see and value women. So tonight, I just want to speak, not as a celebrity, not as someone with all the answers, but as a human being who's seen a little bit of life, a little bit of loss, and a lot of love. This is a message that every woman deserves to hear. You know, somewhere along the way, we were taught that perfection is the goal, that being enough means being flawless in how we look, how we talk, how we live, how we love. But the truth is, perfection is an illusion. It's a story the world sells to us, and too many of us spend our lives chasing it, breaking ourselves in the process. Perfection doesn't exist in the real world. Real life is messy, unpredictable, and beautifully imperfect. It's coffee spilled on your shirt before a big meeting. It's saying the wrong thing and then learning how to make it right. It's the scar on your knee from when you fell as a kid, or the tremor in your voice when you're trying to be brave. Those are the moments that make you real, they make you human, and I think that's far more beautiful than being perfect. I once met a woman who told me she hated being in photos. She said she always looked awkward, never like the other women she saw online, polished, poised, perfect, but I remember the way her eyes lit up when she started talking about her son. There was so much love, pride, and light in her face that it changed everything about her. She wasn't posing, she wasn't pretending, she was alive. And in that moment I thought, this is what beauty really looks like. It's not in symmetry or filters, it's in authenticity. It's the glow of being yourself. We live in a world that profits from our insecurity. Billboards, ads, social media, they're all whispering the same thing. You're not enough, you need more, you need fixing. And if you hear that message long enough, you start to believe it. You start measuring your worth by comparison. To a model, to a coworker, to someone's highlight reel on Instagram. But comparison is a thief. It steals your peace, your joy, your truth. You don't have to look like anyone else. You don't have to live someone else's version of success. You are allowed to just be imperfect, evolving, human. The people who love you most don't care about perfection. They love you because of your quirks, your laughter, your kindness, the way you show up when it matters. Think about it. When was the last time someone truly cared about whether your hair was perfect or your body fit a certain size? No one remembers perfection. People remember presence. They remember how you made them feel. I think about the times in my own life when I tried to be perfect, to say all the right things, to never make mistakes, to never disappoint anyone. And every time it left me exhausted and disconnected, because chasing perfection keeps you from living honestly. It makes you hide the parts of you that are real, the pain, the fear, the vulnerability, but those parts are the bridges that connect us to each other. When you share your flaws, you remind someone else that it's okay to be human too. There's something powerful about imperfection. It's where growth begins. It's the space where empathy lives. The Japanese have a word, kintsugi. It means golden repair. When a piece of pottery breaks, instead of throwing it away, they mend it with gold. The cracks aren't hidden, they're illuminated, because the story of how it broke and healed is what makes it precious. Imagine if we saw ourselves that way, not as broken things to be fixed, but as souls being shaped by the journey. So maybe we stop chasing perfection and start embracing presence. Maybe the goal isn't to have a perfect life, but a full one, full of laughter, mistakes, learning, love, because life isn't meant to be flawless, it's meant to be felt. And in that raw, honest space, that's where your beauty lives, not in perfection, but in truth, not in being everything to everyone, but in being completely, unapologetically yourself. You know, for a long time, people have mistaken silence for strength. They've been told that if they just keep it together, don't complain, don't cry, don't make waves, then they're strong. But strength isn't about staying quiet when something hurts. It's not about pretending that everything's fine when it's not. Real strength is found in the courage to speak, even when your voice trembles. It's in standing up, even when you're standing alone. There's a certain kind of power in speaking your truth, and it's not the loud, showy kind that demands attention. It's quiet, steady, honest. It's a power that comes from deep inside, from the part of you that refuses to stay small. Every time you tell your story, every time you say this happened and it mattered, you are reclaiming a piece of yourself. And that's strength. I once met a woman who worked in an office where everyone overlooked her ideas. She was bright, creative, thoughtful, but whenever she tried to speak, she was interrupted or dismissed. For years, she convinced herself that staying quiet was easier, safer, until one day she couldn't anymore. She spoke up in a meeting, her voice shaking, her hands trembling, but her message, her truth, was clear. That single moment changed the entire direction of her team and eventually her career. Not because she yelled, not because she fought, but because she finally used her voice. That's the thing about silence. It can protect you for a while, but it can also become a cage. When you stay silent too long, you start to shrink inside yourself. You start to believe that your thoughts, your needs, your boundaries don't matter. But they do. They matter more than you think, because your voice carries your story, and your story has power. Some of the most powerful movements in history began with one person saying enough, one person daring to speak when it wasn't convenient or safe. Rosa Parks didn't stay silent. Malala Yousafzai didn't stay silent. They understood that silence might feel comfortable, but it doesn't create change. The truth is, the world doesn't transform through quiet endurance. It transforms through brave honesty. But I understand why people stay silent. I really do. The world doesn't always make it easy to speak up. Sometimes you're afraid of being misunderstood, of losing something, your job, your friends, your peace. Sometimes you're just tired, and that's okay. There's no shame in that. But even in those moments, your silence doesn't define your strength. Your resilience does. The fact that you keep showing up, that you keep trying, even when it's hard, that's power. Still, there comes a time when the weight of silence becomes too heavy to carry. When it starts to feel like you're fading in your own life, that's the moment you need to remember. Your words are not weapons. They're wings. They don't destroy. They release. When you speak, you remind yourself that you're still here, that your feelings are valid, your experiences are real, and your perspective matters. I've seen people who spent years holding everything inside finally decide to share their truth about their struggles, their trauma, their dreams, and you could almost see the light come back into their eyes because silence suffocates, but expression breathes life back into you. It's not always easy, it's not always received the way you want it to be, but it's necessary. The next time you think you have to stay quiet to be strong, remember that strength isn't about silence, it's about authenticity. It's about having the bravery to say, this is who I am, this is what I've been through, and this is what I believe. It's about letting the world hear you even when it's uncomfortable, because your truth deserves space. Your story deserves to be heard, and your voice, that steady, human, honest voice, might just be the spark that gives someone else permission to find theirs. You know, love is one of the most beautiful things we can experience. It connects us, it heals us, it gives meaning to the small, ordinary moments that make life feel extraordinary. But sometimes love can also be confusing. Sometimes it can make you forget your own worth, especially when you start giving more than you receive. Because love alone isn't enough. What you deserve isn't just love. You deserve reciprocity. You deserve to be met with the same care, effort, and respect that you give so freely to others. So many people mistake endurance for love. They stay in relationships, friendships, even jobs where they're constantly giving, constantly understanding, constantly compromising, until there's nothing left of themselves to give. They think that if they just love harder, if they just try a little more, maybe the other person will finally see them. But that's not love. That's survival. And you shouldn't have to survive inside something that's supposed to make you feel alive. I once met a woman who said she felt invisible in her own marriage. She was kind, giving, patient, always there for everyone. Her husband, her children, her coworkers, they all relied on her. But no one ever asked how she was. She said, "I'm surrounded by people, but I feel alone." That broke my heart because I think a lot of people live like that, thinking love means always being the one who holds everything together. But love isn't meant to weigh you down. It's meant to lift you up. Reciprocity isn't about keeping score. It's not about counting who gives more or who says I love you first. It's about balance. It's about knowing that the energy you give doesn't disappear into silence. It comes back to you in words and actions, in presence. Real love, the kind that sustains, not drains, exists in that balance. Sometimes the hardest thing you'll ever do is to stop accepting half love when your heart is capable of so much more. It's not selfish to want the same care you give. It's not demanding to want to be heard, to be appreciated, to be seen. That's the foundation of healthy connection. Two people, equally invested, equally willing to show up, to grow, to make it work. And it's not just about romantic relationships. This idea of reciprocity applies everywhere. Friendships, family, work. You deserve to be in spaces where your kindness is not mistaken for weakness. You deserve people who ask about your day, who notice when you're quiet, who see your effort and say thank you. Because appreciation is a form of love too. There's a peace that comes when you finally realize you don't have to chase people to stay in your life. The ones who are meant to be there will meet you where you are. They'll listen, they'll care, they'll try, and that's what you deserve. Not perfection, but effort. Not grand gestures, but consistency. I think about how often people give their all just to prove they're worthy of love. But the truth is, you already are. You don't have to earn what should be freely given. If you have to beg someone to stay, if you have to shrink yourself just to keep their attention, that's not love, that's fear, and love should never make you feel small. There's a quiet power in stepping back and saying, I want mutual energy. I want real partnership. I want love that moves in both directions. Because when you stop settling for one-sided love, you make room for the kind that fills you instead of empties you. You deserve to be with people who pour into you, not just those who take from you. People who celebrate your light, not just stand in it. You deserve love that listens when you speak, holds space for your silence, and reminds you that you're not alone. So don't settle for being someone's convenience when you're meant to be someone's choice. Don't confuse being needed with being valued. Wait for the kind of love that meets you halfway, the kind that sees you, hears you, and chooses you every single day, because love without reciprocity isn't love that lasts. It's love that leaves you searching, and you deserve more than that. You deserve love that gives back what your heart so freely offers. You know, there's this quiet pressure that lives in the world, this unspoken rule that you have to hit certain milestones by a certain age, or you've somehow fallen behind, that by your 20s you should have it all figured out. By your 30s you should have stability. By your 40s, success. And after that, people start to look at you like your story's already been written. But life doesn't work that way. Your worth isn't tied to a clock, a calendar, or a label that someone else puts on you. You are not late, you are not early. You are right on time for your own life. We live in a culture obsessed with timelines. It tells you that your value has an expiration date, especially if you're a woman. The world measures your beauty by your youth, your success by your relationship status, your happiness by how well you fit a certain mold. But those are cages disguised as standards. You are not meant to be measured by how well you fit into someone else's timeline. You are meant to expand beyond it, to define it on your own terms. I once spoke with a woman who said she felt like she missed her chance. She was 47, recently divorced, and she told me she felt invisible, like life had passed her by. But then she paused and said, you know, I always wanted to paint. So she started, slowly, quietly. A year later, she was selling her art at a local gallery. She said, I've never felt more alive. And I thought, how many people stop themselves because they think their moment has expired? The truth is, your dreams don't come with an age limit. They come with courage. The world will try to label you by your age, your gender, your mistakes, your past. But none of those labels can touch your worth. You're not defined by the years you've lived, but by the life inside those years. You're not defined by the roles you've played, daughter, partner, mother, employee, as if your identity can only exist through what you give to others. You're defined by the quiet fire inside you, the resilience that's carried you through every storm, the laughter that's survived your hardest days. That's what defines you. I think about how much we lose when we believe the myth that there's a right time for everything. How many people stop themselves from starting something new because they think they're too old or too young or not ready enough? But readiness is a lie. No one is ever completely ready for change, and yet that's where growth lives. I've seen people fall in love at 60, start a business at 70, go back to school at 80. They didn't care about the clock. They cared about living fully. There's research from Harvard that shows people in their 60s often report being happier and more fulfilled than they were in their 30s. Why? Because they've stopped trying to prove something. They've stopped running someone else's race. They've started living on their own terms. That kind of peace, that quiet confidence, comes when you stop measuring your worth by external milestones and start trusting your own timing. Sometimes the most beautiful chapters of your life won't happen when the world expects them to. They'll happen when you're ready to listen to yourself, when you finally stop rushing, stop comparing, stop apologizing for being where you are. The truth is, there's no such thing as being behind in life. You are not in competition with anyone. You are your own story, and it's unfolding exactly the way it's supposed to. So wherever you are, whatever stage you're in, it's enough. You are not your age, your job title, your relationship status, or your past mistakes. You are the lessons you've learned, the compassion you've shown, the courage you've found in the quiet moments no one sees. And that's timeless. That's beyond labels. Because worth isn't something you earn. It's something you already have. And it doesn't fade with time. It deepens with every breath, every choice, every chapter you live. You know, there are moments in life when everything just gets quiet, when the noise fades and suddenly you're left alone with your thoughts, the doubts, the questions, the fears. It's in those moments when you start to wonder if you matter, if anyone really sees you, if all the effort you give, all the love you pour out ever makes a difference. And I want to tell you something. You do matter. You are seen, even when it feels like no one's looking. And you are enough, even when the world makes you believe you're not. There's a strange loneliness that comes from living in a connected world. You can have hundreds of people around you, messages lighting up your phone, but still feel completely unseen. Maybe you've given so much of yourself to others that there's not much left to give to yourself. Maybe you've been there for everyone, and yet when you need someone, the silence echoes. That silence can make you doubt your own worth. But loneliness isn't proof of being unloved. It's a reminder of your own depth. It's what happens when your heart craves connection that's real, not just present. I remember meeting a woman once who said she felt invisible. She was a mother, a friend, a coworker, always giving, always smiling. But she told me that when she came home at night, she felt hollow, like no one truly saw her for who she was beyond what she did. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. We wear roles, responsibilities, masks, and after a while we forget that we exist outside of them. But here's the truth. Your worth isn't tied to how much you do for others. You don't have to be everything to everyone to be valuable. You are worthy just by being here, just by existing, just by breathing. There's this idea that being alone is a weakness, that if you're not constantly surrounded by people, something's wrong with you. But solitude can be sacred. It's in those quiet moments that you start to hear your own voice again. The world gets so loud, everyone telling you who to be, what to chase, how to look, how to live. But when it's just you, when the noise is gone, you begin to realize that you've always had what you were looking for. It's inside you, the strength, the love, the resilience. It's all there. Some of the most powerful transformations happen when you feel alone. Think about it. Growth doesn't happen in comfort. It happens in stillness and heartbreak, in the space where you're forced to face yourself. The pain of isolation teaches you to build from within, to trust yourself, to become your own source of comfort. That's not loneliness. That's awakening. You are not behind just because you don't have the things other people have. You are not less just because your path looks different. Everyone's journey unfolds at its own rhythm, and yours is no less meaningful. There are people out there right now who look at you and see someone strong, someone kind, someone inspiring. Even if you can't see it yourself, when you start to believe that you're enough, everything changes. You stop chasing validation. You stop begging for love that doesn't return. You stop apologizing for existing. You start to see that you don't have to earn the right to take up space. You already belong here. You always have. So when the nights get heavy and the silence feels unbearable, remember this. You are not broken for feeling lonely. You are human. You are still growing, still learning, still becoming the love you've been waiting for, the one that feels safe, gentle, and real. It starts with you. You are enough, even when no one tells you. You are enough, even when the world forgets. You are enough, even when you're standing in the dark, trying to remember your own light. Because that light, it's still there. It always has been, and it's waiting for you to see it again. So if you take anything from this tonight, let it be this. You are not here to fit someone else's idea of what a woman should be. You are here to become, to evolve, to create, to love fiercely, to live fully, to write your own definition of beautiful. And if no one's told you this lately, you matter, you're powerful, and you are already enough.